Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our town hall meeting to discuss genetically modified mosquitoes. We hope that today that we will be able to answer your questions and you may become more informed about the proposed trial from Oxitec mosquito. Let me go ahead and go through how we're going to run this today. I hope you all would work with us so we can get through this and it'd be informative to everybody, and everybody would have a chance to present their questions, and our panel of experts can answer them to the best of their ability. Thank you. My name is Pat Labrada. I got kind of roped into doing this at our noon Rotary Club meeting today. It's a good thing that I am doing it. I've been asked to do the presidential debates next June at Florida Keys Community College. So this is a little bit of a, get used to doing this kind of activity. This is how we're going to run the evening tonight. Okay, everybody has had a chance to write down their questions in the back. We're going to get the questions, and we're going to spend 4 minutes on each question. We'd like you to get through your question within a minute and let the moderators or the experts answer the questions in about 3 minutes. If you have more than one question, please go back and sign in again so we can give everybody a chance to answer, everybody a chance to ask a question. We also will be taking questions from people on the internet. This is being recorded. And so if anybody that's watching on live on television, if you have any questions, you can email us at questions@keysmosquito.org. Questions@keysmosquito.org. I'd like for everybody to please silence their phones if you could, kind of, so we don't have any disruptions and we can get through this town hall meeting without any interruptions. We're going to go till around 7:30, and then if you have any questions or want to hang around till around 8 o'clock.
Public comments will start at 7:30 till 8, and then you can hang around till about 9 o'clock if you want to talk one-on-one. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Beth Ranson. I received my journalism degree from the University of Richmond. I have 20 years experience in public relations and marketing, most of which in the health field. And I am the current Public Education and Information Officer for Florida Keys Mosquito Control District, just so you guys can see me. And I've resided in Key West for a little over 6 years now. I'd also like to introduce Michael Doyle. He is our Executive Director. He has a bachelor's in Interpretive Natural History and a master's in Entomology. In the past, he was a wetlands biologist for the Army Corps of Engineers, spent 5 years with the CDC doing virus research in mosquitoes. He has 8 years experience managing mosquito control programs in Colorado and has been the executive director of the Florida Keys Mosquito Control District for the past 3.5 years. Michael lives in Cudjoe Key with his wife of 15 years, his 3 young children, a dog, and numerous small creatures. He enjoys sailing and paddling and being knee-deep in water, exploring, teaching, collecting, sampling, and just looking for mosquitoes. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Larry Rebar. He has a master's in entomology and plant pathology from the University of Tennessee and a PhD in entomology from Auburn University. He has been in mosquito control for 18 years, 16 years here at the Florida Keys, and he's currently our director of research. Next to him is Andrea Leal. She is our operations director, and she has her master's in entomology and has been with the district for 11 years. To her right is Catherine Przinski. She received her master's in public health from Tulane University in New Orleans. She is currently a PhD student at the University of Florida's Department of Entomology, and her research is focused on the ecology of Aedes aegypti in the Florida Keys. She's been working at the district as a research biologist since January of 2010, and in her spare time, Catherine likes to read and learn about mosquitoes. From Oxitec, we have Dr. Derek Nimmo. He has nearly 20 years experience in molecular biology, studying insects and parasites. He has dedicated his career to fighting diseases like dengue and malaria through the use of new and innovative technologies, and he has a passion for photography and drawing insects and loves swimming with his son to keep fit. Right here we have Dr. Andy McKimmey, has international experience developing control solutions for pests that damage crops and spread diseases. He's worked in the US, Asia, Latin America, Caribbean, and Europe. In his most recent role with Oxitec, Andy heads up the field operations team. He managed the first ever open release field evaluation of a transgenic insect in the USA and the first field trial GM mosquitoes in the Caribbean. He has a Master's of Science in Crop Protection from Bristol University and studied invertebrate ecology for his PhD at Cardiff. Following a postdoctoral post there, he did field work for Insect Investigations Limited before joining Oxitec. When not chasing mosquitoes, Andy enjoys cycling and swimming and generally being outdoors. Right next to me is Dr. Chris Kreese. She's a trained ecologist who did her PhD at UCLA. Chris was a science journalist before joining Oxitec to do public outreach. She helps to provide the evidence about science and technology so that people can make up their own minds about projects on a case-by-case basis. She's worked with nonprofits including Sense About Science and the Science Media Center. She also lived with monkeys in a rainforest for nearly 2 years and likes to go hiking and camping with her family. Then back up at the front of the room, we have our 2 community advisory group members. I scrolled right past them. We have Dr. Bill Irwin. He's a professor of biology and the chair of the Department of Mathematics, Biological, and Physical Sciences at the Florida Keys Community College. He volunteers his time and services locally and globally to organizations that work to protect animal welfare, preserve biodiversity, and promote sustainability. Then we also have Henry Hamilton on the end. He is a conch born and raised here in Key West. He grew up on Stock Island at the family business, Boyd's Key West Campground. Henry's a graduate of Key West High School with an AA from Florida Keys Community College and a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Florida. He's worked with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office for the past 32 years and presently holds the rank of inspector. Henry has lived in Key Haven with his wife Jane for the past 24 years and has 3 wonderful sons, Sean, Justin, and Spencer. And Henry can be reached. I have his phone number if you would like it, if anyone has any questions or needs help at any time. And I will turn this back over to Pat.
Okay, thank you. I also would like to mention that we have some representatives here in the audience from the regulatory agencies evaluating the proposed trial. We have the Center of Disease Controls here, and we have representatives from the FDA are here to listen as well and to address questions about the regulatory process, or the regulation process, excuse me. Food and Drug Administration Center for Veterinary Medicine, the lead agency regulating this proposed project, and the FDA is collaborating with other agencies such as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, for federal regulation of this project. There will be no releases until the FDA has completed an evaluation. So with that, are we ready to start?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. And then I'd like to introduce also our mic runners. We have Chris right over here and Juliana. And our first question will be from Beverly Welber from Marathon. Beverly?
Pat.
Hey, Pat.
Sorry, I think on the schedule we're doing the talks first.
Oh, I am sorry.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I've gotten kicked out of that other job. We do have
Actually, no, we can skip the talks. It's fine.
And who's going to lead that?
Michael.
Mr. Doyle.
Okay.
Sorry, Beverly.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Beverly,
no problem.
we will not forget you.
Okay. And Beth, is that one slide I'd mentioned, is that available or no? If it's not, we can skip it. Okay, no problem. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to the next couple of hours of learning what you're interested in, what the concerns are, what the solutions may be. My name again is Michael Doyle. I'm the Executive Director of Florida Keys Mosquito Control District. And what we're going to be talking quite a bit tonight is about the how-tos of this particular proposed trial, the technology, the mosquitoes, the biology, and all of that. And but one thing that that is really about underneath all of those things is the why. Why would we be doing this here? We can talk about the technical reasons later, but let me just start off talking a bit about the things that I can relate to directly, my personal reasons for being here, and some the reasons from the district also. So I've got about four more minutes, so we'll get started. My purpose for getting into mosquito control in the beginning was essentially helping people and helping the environment. And that may sound, at that time, that was kind of a misnomer or ironic because there was very heavy chemical use. This was back in the 80s. I was in environmental education. I'm really interested in biological control, finding other solutions, non-chemical solutions to helping people. That, in 1992, that became more personal. I was in Africa doing an agricultural survey and came face to face as a village with malaria and the mortality of malaria firsthand. And that really changed my views from insects as an interesting ecological topic to a potentially lethal enemy, so to speak, and what it can do to people and families. At that point, I was in agricultural entomology, and I decided I wanted to make a shift to public health. And so I started making that change. And in 1994, I got a job doing mosquito control. And at that time, there was this thing called BTI, which is, as we know now, it's very common now, but at that point, it was pretty rare. And it's a bacteria that essentially acts like a biological control agent. And I was thrilled by this, that could there be something that we could use in mosquito control that would eliminate mosquitoes, or many of them, without harsh chemicals. And 4 years later, 5 years later, in that program, we had succeeded in reducing the chemical usage, the hard chemicals, from about 60% of our program to less than 5%, and killing more mosquitoes in the process. So I was considered a success of integrated pest management and a success of low-level environmentally sound mosquito control. Fast forward again to 2003, I was running a program in Colorado, and West Nile hit. I had, my daughter here is 11 years old now. She was about 2 weeks old at the time, and the first case of West Nile came out, and it was really close to our home. And so that became even more personal, that it's not just a nuisance issue here in the United States, that there's a disease issue, and it can affect people that I love. And as my wife can attest to, I got very stringent about being outside and repellent and all those things, and holes in the screens, and who can go outside when, and identifying mosquitoes before I smack them to see what the likelihood of disease was, and all of those things she put up with me during that time. But it really changed my view again, that it's not something far away, but it's a disease issue right here in our neighborhood. So again, fast forward to 2011. I arrived here to become the director of this district. Previously, there'd been a couple of years with an active dengue transmission going on. And those same kind of concerns and really fears came back at that time of, now I have 3 children, but my wife was expecting at that time, and what's going to happen with the family and this different disease, dengue. Different mosquito, very different ecology. And I, along with, everyone in the district, had been looking for solutions. We looked at a lot of solutions. Quite honestly, and we can discuss the details more, there really isn't, at that time, and there still isn't, anything that reduces Aedes aegypti down low enough to comfortably not have a potential for dengue transmission or disease transmission. There's, other than DDT, which was used back in the 50s, which literally eliminated this mosquito from 16 countries, and that got rid of dengue too. Other than things like that, there really wasn't anything possible. Just as an example of that, 1987, there was an article called Why Can't We Control Aedes aegypti by S.B. Halstead, 1987. 26 years later, 2013, Why Can't We Control Aedes aegypti was the name of the Pan American Health Association organization's meeting that year. So you can see that we didn't get very far in 26 years in terms of the control of this species. So all of that to say that from what I'm seeing from this whole issue is that, in my estimation, we're underestimating the risk of potential disease issues with this mosquito and the control of the mosquito, which is much harder than it sounds. And then in many cases, overestimating the risk of this particular genetic technology. We're going to get into detail about why I believe that's to be the case, and that many others do too. Finally, as I've been reading the comments, there's many good questions out there that I'm seeing on Facebook, that I'm seeing after news articles nationwide and locally. And it's honestly almost painful for me to see the same questions being answered or asked over and over that we have, in my estimation, some very good answers to. And some are quite simple, some are complex, but the answers are there. And I wish I could answer every single person I see in there, but it would take decades, I feel like, to adequately explain that. So what we hope to do tonight is to answer some of those questions. We hope to do as many as we can, and to further my interest and the district's interest of protecting people in the neighborhoods we live in, Key Haven, in Key West, and other parts of the county, and try to find a way to do that is good for the environment. So those are the two interests that we have, and my personal interest in why I'm here and why the district is here. Thank you.
And Derek, you have some comments as well.
I do. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to go through some slides and give you some more background about the technology and where we are. So, first slide, please. Thanks. If you press it again, it will start. This map shows the spread of Aedes aegypti over the past few hundred years. This non-native mosquito carries diseases like dengue and chikungunya. Why is Aedes aegypti so good at spreading disease? Well, this mosquito basically bites humans almost exclusively. You can see here, this is a female Aedes aegypti feeding on a human. She requires a blood meal to get energy to produce eggs. The males do not blood feed, and they do not transmit disease. This mosquito lives in and around your house, where you are, where the blood meal is, so that she can get the energy to produce eggs. So how do we control them? There is no cure or effective vaccine available, and the World Health Organization recommends vector control, or reducing the mosquito, to help prevent outbreaks. This is the goal of all mosquito control agencies around the world. None of the current control methods are effective enough. There's things like biological control, where you use copepods and other predators. There's larvicides, like BTI, as Michael was explaining, and the Florida Keys Mosquito Control District use at the moment. And adulticide sprays, fogging, basically with insecticides. Now, the Florida Keys Mosquito Control District is one of the best mosquito control agencies in the world. They have some of the best equipment and the best people. And yet they can only cut the Aedes aegypti population in half. It's a numbers game. The more mosquitoes that you have, the more chance there is of disease transmission. So you want to control it as close as possible to 100% reduction. This slide shows the effectiveness of Oxitex mosquitoes, as shown by field trials in different countries. In Brazil, we've done 3 field trials so far, where we've shown over 90% control of Aedes aegypti, and in one case we showed over 99% control. In the Cayman Islands, we've done a trial and shown over 90% control. And also in Panama, we've recently completed a trial, and preliminary results show that we've got equivalent to these sort of results. There are some key points to consider about using Oxitex mosquitoes. We're reducing reliance on insecticides, which can help beneficial predators and insects. It's species specific. We will only ever remove Aedes aegypti from the environment. Oxitec mosquitoes and offspring die. It is self-limiting. It does not persist in the environment. There's nothing left. The trial we have proposed is regulated by the FDA, and they're working with other federal and state agencies. If approved, releases could start in 2015, and the proposed trial site is Key Haven. Now, we did a Key Haven meeting last month for Key Haven residents to talk to them about the trial. We've done other outreach events over the past few years, and we will continue to do these in the future. You can always get in touch with us if you need more information by email or through the website. And thank you very much for listening. We will move forward to taking questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Okay. Again, let's make sure that we try to keep your question to a minute so we have sufficient time to answer it. We have Vanna White over there has our clock, and we're going to try to stick to the rules as closely as we possibly can. Ms. Welber, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity for people to address their concerns. My name is Beverly Welber, and I live in Marathon. Any drug that has been taken off the market by the FDA was at one time approved by the FDA. And I think the concern that people have, or that, well, certainly that I have, is to understand any kind of independent evaluation that the FDA might be making, to be reassured that somehow whatever might come is planned for, that we don't find ourselves in a few years in a situation with consequences that could not be anticipated. You've already mentioned that these mosquitoes might be eradicated. I think it's important to know what impact that might have on other species that might move in to fill that space. So I have a regulatory question, that is the role and the impact of the FDA and how trustworthy all of these things can be when you haven't actually done it here yet. Thank you.
Who wants to take that?
Okay, so how's our time? And then in terms of the questions, 2 questions. How would you like to handle that?
How would you like to handle it?
I'd really like to stick to the one at a time so everybody can get through.
So we'll start with the...
So with the FDA question,
Yep.
Would the FDA like to address that issue? Okay.
Chris, over here. Or you can...
Hopefully I won't rip this out. Hi, I'm Laura Epstein. I'm a policy advisor with the Center for Veterinary Medicine at the Food and Drug Administration. So your question is about the regulatory process. First of all, one thing to realize when you're talking about an approval, right now what everybody is talking about is an investigational trial. So what the FDA is looking at currently is this one trial, which potentially could then lead to full, if the sponsor, Oxitec, decides to pursue it, a full application and a full approval. But the first stage is simply a trial. So when you're talking about several years, this is time limited, and then there would be a separate process if there were to go on for a full approval. I don't know how much you already do or don't know, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I will tell you that FDA regulates genetically engineered animals, and insects are considered animals under the new animal drug authorities. And that requires a pre-market approval process. So sponsors come to us first and they provide data and they have to demonstrate that the product is safe and effective. And this is true even with a genetically engineered animal. And in terms of insects, there are other drugs for insects as well. FDA has approved drugs for honeybees, for example. So even though people don't usually think of insects as animals, that is how the agency treats them. So, and in this case, we are working with other federal agencies as well who have relevant expertise. So experts who have worked on these issues quite a bit from the EPA and from the CDC are involved with us in reviewing all the materials that we're going to get, and we have extensive discussions with them and get their input on all of this. And all of this will go on before we think that there, we've been satisfied that a trial could go forward. But again, this is just an investigational trial and not a full-blown approval at this stage. One of the pieces of this is that there is an environmental review under the National Environmental Policy Act. Am I getting it right? No. Anyway, I'm getting my name wrong, but under NEPA. So there is an environmental review that goes on as well, and those agencies are also involved in it. We do have discussions with the Florida Keys Mosquito Control District because obviously they have a lot more experience and know a lot more about this particular area, but it's those other agencies that are reviewing the materials with us. And then in terms of what you're talking about with sort of, human drugs that you've heard about where after the fact they're approved and people find out things that they didn't know pre-approval and there's labeling added or they're taken off the market as you're referring to. There is a post-market process. Again, that's once there's a full approval. This is just an investigational stage. But for new animal drugs, once there's a full approval, there are requirements for reporting what we refer to as any adverse events. There are inspections that take place post-market and all that sort of thing.
I think,
thank you.
Pat, sorry, just really very quickly, the second question about removing this species from the environment, it's a non-native species, so we're actually restoring their environment if we remove it.
And if anyone else to repeat that question, we'll answer that in more depth.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Again, I'm sorry that I've been reminded that to make sure that we try to hold our questions to 1 minute and our answers to the 3 minutes that follow. The next comment will be from Mr. Welber from Marathon.
Thank you very much. When big pharmaceutical companies come out with a new drug, they only conduct human trials on people who are in the last stages of disease. In other words, they're trying to find out whether or not something works, and they want to do a human trial. They do it with people who are at the end stage or very seriously ill. And I think the question that is on everybody's mind, and has been asked of me several times, is why is Oxitec and mosquito control doing this here, now, in the Florida Keys, when we don't have a problem? If you wanted if you wanted to test this on what essentially are human subjects, you're conducting a medical trial on human subjects, conducted in an area which is in a very serious trouble in terms of dengue fever and the Aedes aegypti mosquito. I just don't understand why here, why now. That's why I don't.
Mr. Welber? I'd also like to point out that Mr. Hamilton up in the panel right here and Mr. Irwin are members of our community advisory group. They live in the test area, and they have input to the board and input on the whole process. So that is why they're sitting up front. Our next question, Beth?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You had answered that.
I can give a general.
Okay, if you could add general about techniques generally, and then I'll speak about our area.
Yes. So, if I heard the question correctly, it's why are we doing this here in the Keys? And dengue is increasing worldwide, as we noted in the slide, and it's increasing almost exponentially. And so we want to provide a technology that will prevent it from coming here. If we control the mosquito, you prevent dengue from coming here. So we're providing something that's actually helping to prevent it to come back to the Keys.
Okay.
And
let's go ahead and get through all the questions, and then we'll have a chance to discuss it further. I think that would be the most efficient way to get it done, Mr. Doyle.
Okay, I'd like Dr. Hribar, who's been here for over a decade and was here during the first epidemic, to answer that, and then if we can add more.
Actually, yes. According to a strict definition of the word, it was an epidemic. There were actually, over the 2 years, 92 people identified as having locally acquired dengue in the city of Key West.
Just let him answer.
Okay. If you
Just talk very seriously.
Okay.
Please, let them answer.
Let me finish something. What's happening? And you say we don't have dengue here right now, and that's true. We don't. Absolutely right. We had dengue serotype 1. There are 4 different serotypes of dengue virus. You can get each one of them separately. You can get dengue 1. You're then immune for the rest of your life to dengue 1. Unfortunately, you can still contract dengue 2 and dengue 3 and dengue 4. The problem is when you get a second infection with a second serotype of dengue, the consequences, the reaction it produces in your body can be much worse. The first infection quite often is very mild. Many people don't even know they were infected. There were a lot of people we found out that they were infected after the fact when other people came in and did a serosurvey, detected antibodies in their blood. They never even felt sick enough to go to the doctor. A second serotype that comes in could produce a much worse effect in the body. You have complications like dengue hemorrhagic fever, dengue shock syndrome, and these things aren't nice. People end up going to the hospital and sometimes die. What's been happening worldwide is we've been noticing over the past decade or so, there's been a resistance to chemical insecticides arising in Aedes aegypti. It's happening all around the world, rather independently, but it's happening. What that means is what we are using now may not be effective. I'm sorry, I think I should go on a little bit with this. When you have people sick,
we'll let us come back to it. I apologize for cutting you off, but we'll come back to it.
Okay. Our next question is coming off the floor. They wanted the moderator to read it. What makes the regular female mosquito mate more with the genetically modified male mosquito?
Yes, so it doesn't mate more with the genetically modified mosquito. It's the fact that we are releasing our male, which competes with the wild-type male to mate with the females. And if that female mates with one of our males, her offspring die. Now, in our releases, when we release them, we release actually more of our males than the wild-type males out there, so that female generally only sees one of our males and mates with one of our males. And that's how we can achieve such effective control.
Okay, thank you. Our next question and comment comes from Jody Smith-Williams. Jody? We'll bring a mic to you right behind you.
Thank you. You talked about the reductions that you've seen in the other sites where you've done your trials. I'd like to know, what does that mean, over what period of time, and what is the evidence about actual reduction of dengue? My understanding is that they actually do have dengue in those places where you conducted those trials.
Good question.
Yeah, very good question.
Yeah.
I think I'll pass the questions about the actual trials to Andy, our field trials manager, and then I might be able to answer he might be able to answer about dengue as well, but I can help.
Sure. So I've been running most of these studies in other places. And first question is about the reduction and time period. So our technology, unlike insecticides, where you'd see a sort of rapid knockdown, within 24 hours sometimes, is a slower process because it acts on generation after generation. So to achieve the sort of 90% suppression of the wild type is between 4 to 6 months, has been the experience in all the studies we've done so far. So that gives you a feel for the time period to achieve those suppressions. And sorry, can you remind me of the second point? Oh,
Yeah,
maybe
about
Derek
dengue.
can take the second point, yeah.
Yes, certainly. So in terms of dengue transmission, we have done 5 trials now, but those trials have been too small to be able to show any sort of effect on dengue, because they have been trials. And, well, that's the point of a trial. The point of the trial was to show the effectiveness of the technology to control the mosquito. Moving on to do an actual trial to show effects on dengue, you actually have to do almost 500,000 people to 1 million people to be able to actually statistically show that. And that's what we're moving on to. And that's what we're doing. And we are working on that in Brazil. So we are moving forwards with that.
Can you say a little more about the Jacobina situation specifically? How much of the city,
Yes.
History, et cetera?
So,
and Dr. Irwin actually has the actual health declaration.
Yes.
About that.
Yes.
That talks about that issue.
So can we go to the slide with the results? So Henry, sorry. Well,
I guess I'm confused. I'm a layman here on the panel.
Yes.
And when I see a slide that says 96%, 99%.
Yes.
1 minute remaining.
Copy.
Sorry.
Yeah, what does that mean?
It tells me that you've eradicated a lot of mosquitoes.
Yes.
But now what I think I just heard is that we haven't eradicated the disease.
No. So you have to be a bit careful with percentages, because we're treating like 3,000 people, 2,300 in these trials. That is not enough people to show any effect on dengue.
So
you can't
statistically.
Yes, statistically.
But it sounds like the rumor that the audience has is that there's still dengue in these locations.
There's dengue around
We
these
haven't
locations.
reduced it,
Yes.
or we haven't stopped it.
So in the case of Jacobina, which is this 50,000 people on the slide there, we have started to treat about 2,000 to 3,000 of those people, and you may have heard something in the news recently that says that we haven't been able to control dengue. Well, of course we haven't, because there's still 46,000 people there, and you can't say that you can control dengue when you're only controlling a certain percentage of the population. Right. So it's...
So here in Key West, say, for example, there was releases, say, and there's not, but say on Sigsbee only,
yeah,
but nowhere else in Key West. Well, then there's plenty of mosquitoes in the rest of Key West outside of Sigsbee, so you could control for 100% of the mosquitoes in one small area, but that's not going to affect the disease transmission anywhere else in the city.
Yes.
And if you're looking at the maps of there, that's exactly what's happened in this area. They've reduced the mosquitoes some 90+% in one little corner, but the rest of the city still has mosquitoes and recurring epidemics like it always has.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. We're going to go ahead and move forward. Oliver Coifert, is he here? Oliver, I just saw him earlier. There he is, down there. You had signed up with a question and a comment?
Not at this time. Later.
He's going to wait.
You can wait? Okay.
We're going to take another question from the floor. Have any studies shown that these GMO mosquitoes will provide long-term effective dengue fever control? Did we just kind of answer that?
Okay. So this is continuing.
It's really, it's very much the same question.
Is whoever wrote this all right with us?
But the recommendations from WHO, the World Health Organization, is for vector control agencies to control the vector. There is no other option. There's no cure, there's no effective vaccine. So every other control agency in the world is trying to reduce the mosquito, which our technology can do effectively.
If I could follow up on that, just think of the big picture of it. The answer is no, because it's only been done in some very, very small areas, so it hasn't had a chance to reduce dengue transmission. It's very much like if everyone here had a cold and I only gave medicine to 3 people, everyone else would still have a cold and they still have the symptoms. That's very much the same situation here. You have to, in a city, you have to, these mosquitoes, or actually the people move around more than mosquitoes. You have to reduce the number of mosquitoes over a large area to reduce the transmission. If you only reduce it in 5% of a city, you're going to have transmission going to the other 95%, and that's essentially what's happening in Jacobina.
So we are.
Yeah, write that question down, and we will get around to that.
Yeah.
That's an excellent question. Excellent question.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to eradicate it in the Keys, like Key Haven?
Hey,
Because
Mr.
it's
Hamilton, you're going to have to go write yours down. Yeah. Ron Cole from Isla Mirada. Where you at, Ron? Right. Chris is right behind you with the mic.
Yeah, as I was driving down here today, I'm a former Navy pilot, and I saw these guys coming into the break and breaking left, and they fly right over Key Haven. And then understand we've got multiple squadrons down here. What is going to be the effect of all these aerosol pollutants coming from the jet fuel exhaust over Key Haven? How's that going to be factored into the testing? You know, this is an environmental piece that needs to be looked at. I'm just wondering, how's that going to affect the test of whether, you know, these aerosols are maybe killing mosquitoes instead of your genetically modified ones?
Shall I grab that one? If I can answer that. It comes down to the design of the study. Within the treatment area, you have part of it will be treated with genetically modified mosquitoes, and the other half will not be treated. And the way we're evaluating the effectiveness of this technology is to compare the suppression of the Aedes mosquito in the area we're treating to the area which isn't being treated. So we try and match as closely as possible the treated area and control area. So when you're talking about sort of weather, environmental pollutants, or other factors like that, as far as possible, we try and design it in a way that those outside factors will impact both the treated and control areas to the same level. Sorry.
So let me just jump in there for a sec. So the idea is that you take a big area where, for instance, the aerosol spray is all over it, right? And you divide it in two. And so they both have that aerosol problem. You treat the one side with the GM mosquitoes. You don't treat the other. So you've controlled for that aerosol. So any effect that you see if the population of mosquitoes goes down, it's just because of the GM mosquitoes, not because of the aerosol, because that's everywhere.
Okay. Thank you. Our next question and comment is from...
Just comments for later.
Okay, Deb Curley. Deb?
Thank you. I first want to say that I am sympathetic to the people that are suffering in these other places from dengue fever. But an investigational trial here, I mean, why here? I mean, I know you're trying to answer that, but it makes no sense to me. We don't want to be guinea pigs.
Doyle?
Okay, so why here? Several reasons. Number one, there's a staff who can do this kind of work. There's very few places in the United States have programs large enough and have an academic staff and whatnot to handle it. For example, when I was at CDC, we tried to do a study an operational study in Puerto Rico. It's impossible. There's no programs there that could support a trial like this over a long period of time. So that's one reason. Why here in the Keys? Because we are the southernmost place in the United States. We are definitely within the range of recurring dengue epidemics. In 2009 and 10 is a good example of that. And then third, we have the funding to protect people here. We can do things that many other places can't, and so to be precautionary and to work now instead of reacting to epidemics later that may come. And I'm not fear-mongering anything here. We are being reasonable and precautionary about the health of people in the future. It's let me say one more thing. I've got a little bit more. I think from what I hear is that the assumption is that it's a dangerous thing, and why is there if it's a high risk thing, why do we have why a high risk thing for a low risk problem? And very honestly, I think that's almost backwards. I think the risk for mosquito-borne disease is higher than most people realize. And secondly, and more importantly, that this proposed technology, even though it sounds a little far-fetched or fantastic at times, it's actually a very reasonable, controlled project.
So just really quickly on that guinea pigs point, I think that's a really fair question to ask. And so 2 points that really mattered to me when I was investigating this was one, that it's not the first time transgenic insects have been released in the U.S. It actually has been done before by the USDA in Arizona. It's a pink bollworm. It's a pest of cotton, and that started in 2006. And the other point, too, is just that there have been trials done already and risk assessments for those trials. And every country, it's up to their regulators to do an independent investigation to see if it's going to be good enough of a product for their own country.
And the USDA did do an environmental assessment on the pink bollworm, and stated that it was preferable to other control technologies.
Okay, thank you. Beth, you have the next question?
The next question is from the floor. If the issue of GMO labeling is on everyone's ballots across the country, why would we take a risk of allowing a GMO product into our most fragile environment?
So this mosquito is non-native to the Keys, so we are trying to actually restore the environment here to what it was before. So that's what the Mosquito Control District is doing, to restore the environment, but also to control diseases.
Sir?
Sorry? What was...
A lot of things aren't native. Doesn't mean they should...
Excuse me, sir? Thank you. Go ahead, finish, sir.
Do you want me to repeat it, or?
Yeah, repeat the question.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
If the issue of GMO labeling is on everyone's ballots across the country, why would we take a risk of allowing a GMO product into our most fragile environment?
Yeah, so I think this is more about GM crops versus GM mosquitoes, because, well, yes, and our organism is very different. So it's self-limiting. It doesn't persist in the environment. It's not designed in the similar way to GM crops. So I think in that way, it's very different.
So from my perspective, just jumping in here for a quick sec, I think the really relevant question is, can we afford to do nothing, because prevention is the best defense?
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Doyle?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to answering questions about alternate control strategies. I really am. This is something that we've looked into. Okay, so
we've got that question. But
the biological control, if that question comes up, Dr. McKinney did most of his work in biological control, and he can answer that very well. But that's not the question presently. The question is GM mosquitoes versus GM crops. Is there a difference? And I would say yes, there is. There's many differences. The primary difference in my mind is that GM crops are designed to improve the crop in some way, to make it resistant to a pesticide, to make it grow faster, produce more, produce a certain color, et cetera. It's making a better crop. That's their goal. And we all know about the issues that can occur because of the strength of those crops. This is exactly the opposite. The gene, instead of improving the crop or the plant, and making it more competitive in the environment, it's actually making it less competitive. It's if the gene works, it kills the mosquito. If it doesn't work, then it becomes a normal mosquito, just like the one that we have here. In fact, it's actually better than that, because these mosquitoes are not resistant to pesticides. So if there were GM mosquitoes in a yard and regular mosquitoes in the yard, and we came and sprayed the yard, it would kill the GM mosquitoes, and then the native mosquitoes, which are resistant because of DDT use and other things, would live on. So it's actually a weaker animal. Mm-hmm. Is there any other comments from the others?
Yeah, any other points to add?
No, we're going to move forward in this. Heidi Golightly. Why don't we wait for the mic there? I know you're a school teacher and you like to jump in there.
So you're saying you're very well funded, and I've been a taxpayer in Key West in Monroe County for 20 years.
Yes.
And I pay taxes.
Yes.
and I am a voter. Every other issue that is contentious in Monroe County goes on the ballot via a referendum, so we can all have a voice. This is not on a ballot, and I don't feel like I have a voice here. I am being told what to do, and I am being at risk for a mosquito biting me. That Oxitec, I don't put any chemicals in my body, and I am taking a Oxitec mosquito into my body, maybe on a daily basis, that flew in from Key Haven. They have wings, they fly, and wind, air. I'm just curious why this isn't on a ballot and why the Mosquito Control Board can just let us just go with it.
Can you pull up slide 7, please? 7. Okay. So I'm about to bring up one of the professional surveys that was done. Before we considered this issue at all, we did several surveys. I won't go through all of them, but this is the professional survey that was done. You can just leave it there. I think that's large enough. No need messing with it. This was done because you can see that it's a professional survey that was done, and we wanted to find out what's the general view of the public, and as you can see that with these numbers here, it's general acceptance with a lot of people who are neutral or don't understand that. So.
I went door to door, nobody agreed. Door to door, and I didn't have one person that wanted GMO mosquitoes. Door to door.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So yeah, so that just in terms of the issues, especially with public health issues, is there anyone else who actually like to answer this in terms of the legality issues or anything else? Anyone else?
Well, I would just ask, do you have to go do a ballot if you have your government build roads? All right. The question.
Okay. Mr. Hamilton.
I guess.
Hold on, guys. Go ahead, Mr. Hamilton.
I guess what I'm hearing is that there's a fear of what the government is doing and that they're forcing something on you, whether it's in Key Haven or whether it's elsewhere. If they're going to do something to Key Haven, to my family, to my friend's family, or anything like that, I had people come to my door and knock on it. Now, the purpose of the town meetings and the purpose of having scientists are to give us the data, because I don't know how many scientists are out there, but like when I talk about my job, I try to do it the best that I can. And the same with these scientists or killing mosquitoes. That's their job and that's what they're trying to do. Now, I'd like to know a little bit more about it, but I don't see someone trying to, I see people trying to inform the public about what's going on. And if my understanding is correct, the FDA has to, and the other government agencies have to approve it. Whether it goes on to a ballot or not, they still have to say it's safe and it's okay. There's a lot of questions that still need to be out there. That's why they're having town meetings, and that's why I'm wanting to listen to what information they give and the good questions that you have, because a lot of them deal with the fear of the unknown about what's going to happen.
Yeah, and actually on that, Heidi made two really good points that I don't think got addressed. She was concerned that there might be something going into her body and how that would affect her and whether the mosquitoes will spread. So I think that's really important and should be addressed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please, someone ask that question so we can get to it.
Yeah.
She did. That was her. That was in her question.
I asked 3 questions. If everyone asked 3 questions, we wouldn't get to everyone.
Do I have time?
We want multiple questions. We'll get back to it.
We're good.
We will answer everyone that's
That'll be something
asked
that we can come back to in the discussion period. Okay. Next question is from Mila Demir. She has one question.
I have too many, but I guess I have to pick a one. That's going to be a question. Thank you, the FDA, to be here. Originally, the application experiment supposed to be 3 to 6 months and about 3 million mosquitoes. Supposed to be in Key West. Could you please explain to us how long and how many millions mosquitoes are expected to be released, and why the switch from Key West to Key Haven? Thank you.
Thank you. Guys?
Let me address the how long, according to the proposed trial, they've actually has 22 months to prove that they can reduce the mosquitoes down to a certain level. In other places, they've done it in eight or less, basically one rainy season. So that hope answers the time period. The number of mosquitoes, I'll have to cover that to Derek because it's dependent on the more number of mosquitoes there are in the wild, the more you have to release. If there's very few mosquitoes, you release very few because you're always trying to get about 10 males for every wild female. So
just to give you an example, in the Cayman Islands, which was a similar size to Key Haven, we released 240,000 males a week and 3.3 million in total.
So, 300,000?
Well, it will be. It depends on how many are out there.
Yeah.
So it could be
300,000?
Over 6 to 9 months, but potentially over 22 months.
6 to 9 months, but potentially 22 months. 300,000 million mosquitoes, about 300,000 a week.
Yep.
Well, but that would decrease in the cool season, like it is now. There aren't many mosquitoes out there, so the numbers you had to put out would be very low. So it's all based on the numbers in the trap.
Just a note, we've released about 70 million of our males so far worldwide in other trials.
How do you count the mosquitoes?
That's a question that we can
volumetrically
discuss
yes.
later. Beth, you have a question?
Okay. Michael, you didn't answer the second.
Okay, what? Oh, excellent. Excellent point. Okay, yeah, thank you very much for the reminder.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, why Key West to Key Haven? After discussing it with Oxitec, they're doing studies in these cities where basically a single street separates the area they're releasing mosquitoes to the area they're not releasing mosquitoes. And the trouble is that these mosquitoes don't fly very far. A couple of blocks is their normal flight range. But a couple of blocks if the wild mosquitoes are flying into their control area, it dilutes, it changes the numbers and makes it look like that the control is not working as well as it should. And almost anywhere in Key West, there's a couple of things we need. We need a high number of mosquitoes so you can see if it's really working. And you need a pretty isolated area so you don't have mosquitoes flying in and changing your results. As we looked around, we looked at Ocean Reef. Ocean Reef wanted us to do this. And the trouble in there is they don't have enough Aedes aegypti up there to do a trial, so we couldn't do it there. We looked at a number of different locations. Key Haven, as you can see on the screen, is a very good location because it's isolated. It's basically an island with one area, and it's split into basically 3 areas. So you could split it into an area where you release mosquitoes.
So, Mike, what you're saying is basically a segregated area.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, Mila, we've got a question from Beth.
Is time up?
We'll come back.
I have a question. It was Oxitec or FDA?
We'll come back. We'll come back. Beth?
Hold that. Please ask that question, and we'll get back to it, honestly.
The question from the floor is, who is paying for this and what is the cost?
Mr. Doyle?
Okay. The answer is that Oxitec is paying for it. And very much like any other of the, as you know, this district works very hard to find the best technology out there, the newest, what works best. We're leaders in a lot of that. And so if you look at our history and look at my director's report every week, you can see that we test new larvicides that claim to work better. We test new adulticides that claim to work better or are less expensive. And these companies come down and they give us product generally to test for them. And it's two point, to see if it works in our area, because the same product doesn't work the same in every area. And essentially to prove to us In a small area, is it going to work? If it works well in a small area, then we'll expand it slowly to a larger area and then maybe adopt it entirely. That's a normal process. And so companies do that. This is very similar to that. They've come and said, we have this product, a mosquito, we think it's going to work. So we said, do it in a small area to see if it's going to work. And so they're paying to do that. It's just a lot more complicated of a product than say, a bag of insecticides or, or a drum. And so it requires a room to rear the mosquitoes and things. And then, of course, with FDA's requirements and protocols and things like that, it's a lot more complicated to try a product like this. It doesn't fit the normal chemical usage that everything else does. I hope that does that answer your question?
If we have time, just one really quick thing to add. I think it's, yeah, I think it's really,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. I don't know the cost, the total cost, because it is a trial, just like you wouldn't know how that, but I can tell you this, I'll be very simple. The goal for the district is that this technology will cost the same or less than the technology we're using now and be more effective. My job as a director is to find ways to kill mosquitoes more effectively and for less dollars. This is one of the many tests and attempts to do that. If it works, we'll use it. If it doesn't work, then we won't use it.
Hold on. Alan, you had a question, Alan Demir? Where'd he go? Uh-oh. Next question.
We can rotate back to him.
Barry Ray. Mila, when he comes back, we can...
Barry Ray from Isla Mirada. Barry, where are you? Okay. Chris? Thank you.
I have a whole list.
Before you say it, one question.
1, 2, 3. How's that?
One question, thank you.
No, I have a whole list of questions. I'll ask one.
Okay.
I do enjoy the debate. I do enjoy the spirit of the room, and I do applaud mosquito control and the amount of people that you've brought here to be able to discuss this. I do believe that you are watching the sentiment of the people, and I'm going to make one comment to start. I take huge issue with you presenting that survey as some scientific, independently crafted survey. It was a ruse. And everybody that has been interviewed in Key Haven is either unaware that they had a choice or they were unaware that they were painted in favor of this process. So I think you need to recant that.
Okay, your question, sir.
I'm going to ask one question. There's a series of 3 criteria that Key West placed upon Mosquito Control Board in order to be able to proceed to achieve their approval. They stand in opposition since 2012 to this, and I would say that's probably more likely why you're not doing this in Key West than why you're doing it in Key Haven, where the county hasn't passed
real
its
quickly,
ordinance.
what is your question?
I'm prefacing my question. Let me finish prefacing.
Well,
all right. So I would say that's the case. Can you address those 3 criteria? Those 3 criteria were that you needed technical and quality standards for release, that you needed criteria for success or failure, and you needed regulatory authority in order to proceed. Where are we at with all of those? Most importantly, the criteria for success or failure.
Okay, excellent. If FDA, because those 3 issues, the technical quality and criteria for success or failure and regulatory authority, would you be comfortable addressing that in general or to this? Is that possible?
If you feel necessary, you're trying to convince these people this is a good idea.
And if you cannot, I understand.
When you're talking about a good idea, I don't think that's an issue really for the FDA to address, because that's not, whether something is a good idea or not is not essentially part of the FDA process. FDA evaluates safety and effectiveness. So if the question is about whether or not this is a good idea, I think it's it might be better for you to address it.
No, I think we've decided okay, the question, make sure we get this, is it a good idea, number one, and then to decide if it's a good idea, there are really two questions. Is it a good idea? We believe yes. Yes, sir.
I don't believe you've met any of those tests yet. You may meet FDA approval, but there's two other criteria that remain there, one being the criteria for success or failure, and the other being your quality standards. How will you address wind? How will you address proximity to a school, to a hospital, and things like this? You haven't addressed these specific issues, and they are huge concerns for this community.
Those issues, if I understand the FDA process, is they do require a criteria for success or failure. Did the product work or not? And they can speak more detail to that if they wish, and the other technical qualities that are needed.
All right. In terms of criteria for success or failure, when we talk for a product about effectiveness, what happens is a sponsor comes in and makes their claims. So, you know, the claim could be, you know, reduces the tumor size within 4 months or something, or, you know, eliminates warts on your feet, or whatever it is, whatever the claim is, they have to conduct studies that will show that they can achieve that claim. So that's how FDA evaluates what so-called success is. It depends upon what the sponsor determines are, you know, they define what success is. Whether that's what you would consider success is another matter. So I don't know if that entirely answers the question. You may want to answer the question further about a broader sense of what success is.
Okay.
Yeah. So criteria for success or failure. So we've submitted a protocol and we've submitted criteria, but the basic criteria is that we control that mosquito. That's the basic criteria of the trial, to prove, where we have shown elsewhere in Cayman and in Brazil, that we can control this mosquito. There's set levels for that, and there's statistical analysis. Andy's done some of that.
The defined criteria in the submission is greater than 50%. So that is the defined criteria. Greater than 50% control of the mosquito population. And as Mike has sort of said already, with the best technology available in the world and current methods, to achieve 50% control is a struggle. And they're able to do that here because they've got fantastic resources and staff, etc. Many other places, you don't even come close to that. So we're in the claim, we're saying we need to get better than 50% control of the population.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from one of our viewers that came in through the internet. Beth, you want to go ahead?
Yep. This technology sounds a lot, this is from Jack Newman. This technology sounds a lot like SIT, or SIT, which was used to eradicate the screwworm in Florida, a horrible disease. SIT used genetically altered sterile insects made by a different method. Can you comment on the similarity or difference between SIT and this technology?
Derek?
Yes, I can. I think I will make one little correction. SIT is not based on genetically modified. It's based on sterilize the insects by irradiation. So what they do is they rear the insect like we do. They usually separate the males from the females, because it's the females that usually cause damage or disease spread. And then they irradiate the males. This irradiation makes them sterile. They release those males. Those males mate with the females in the wild. They produce no offspring, and they can control the insects using that method. And it works very well. It's been used for over 60 years now, all around the world for different insects. Now, it doesn't work with mosquitoes because mosquitoes are too fragile. The irradiation process actually makes them too unfit, sick, if you like, to actually compete and be effective. And that's one of the reasons that we've actually come forward with this new technology as an SIT-based method to be able to control this mosquito.
Okay, thank you. Beth Elliott from Key Haven. Hey, Beth.
It's my understanding that the objective is to release primarily males. However, in the process, there's a percentage of genetically modified females that will be released, will be biters, and will breed. What happens when they bite, and what happens when they breed with a non-genetically modified mosquito?
Okay, so I'll answer the first part first, is, which, if I understand it, is your concern over getting bitten by the mosquito, is that right? Yes, so there is about 1 in every 1,500 males that we release is a female. We use a sorting method by size, and it sorts very efficiently, but it's not 100%. So there will be females released, and there is a potential that you will get bitten. So we've obviously been concerned about that ourselves, so we've looked at it and said, well, is this female any different to a wild-type female? So we've basically looked at that in some experiments that we've done to look at the saliva and the insect itself, and it is no different getting bitten by one of our mosquitoes to being bitten by a wild-type mosquito. And the FDA is evaluating some of those studies and at the moment, and it's not just the FDA, it's the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the CDC. Sorry?
So yeah, if I can pick that one up. Yeah. If I
sorry. Yeah. So
if there's interspecific, well, no, it's
no.
If female, make sure I have this right. If a female that is released along with the males mates with a wild male that was flying around the neighborhood already, what will happen?
Okay, that's thanks, Beth. That's exactly the same as getting one of our males mating a wild-type female, or the offspring die. If a wild-type male waits an oxytec female, or the offspring die. It's exactly the same.
So regardless of what happens, they all die after a generation or so?
Yeah, the offspring die, after a generation or so, yes. Okay. The offspring, yes.
Yep. Yes. Let me answer a bit of that too. This is one of the things. So my role here as an advisor is simply that I started looking at this issue over 2 years ago when it was first suggested, and I had exactly the same questions that you all have. What if this, and what if this? And as somebody who works to protect the environment, that's my concern. I'm concerned with our human health environment and our animal environment and so on. So these were over 2 years ago. I started asking these questions of Oxitec and of mosquito control and looking at the literature to find the answers in the studies. Many of the questions were answered a long time ago by Oxitec and by others, and some were not then, but the studies were in progress and have been done. So a lot of this has, they're great questions, and they're great questions that we should all have, but there are answers to them, fortunately. And we're at the point now where I'm starting, my concern is we are currently doing something already. This isn't that we're going to do something and we're currently not doing anything. We're currently doing something that has an effect, a negative effect. It controls the mosquitoes to a certain degree, but it also has negative consequences that we know of. So my question at this point is this a better technology? Is this safer for the environment, safer for us than what we're currently doing, and more effective? And I think that's the question we should be asking, not is it itself, but is it better? Is it a better alternative than what we're doing? That's what I'd like to know.
Okay. Hold on to that question. Alan, you're back. It's your turn, sir.
Hi, I'm wondering how many cases of dengue have been found in Key Haven?
Mr. Doyle?
I'd like to pass it to one of my colleagues who've been here. We're here during the event, and these are officially reported cases, not
Andrea?
Suspect.
We did have 3 cases in 2009 in Key Haven residents. They couldn't trace whether they got them on Key Haven or in Key West, but there were 3 in 2009.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the question. Next question.
Did they live?
Has there been any independent scientific study of previous Oxitec mosquito releases to determine whether the releases introduced any genetic change in local mosquito populations?
So during the Cayman trial, that we saw the 96% reduction in the mosquitoes in, we looked for presence of the gene after the releases had stopped to check that there was nothing left in the environment. And within 2 weeks after stopping those releases, we could detect nothing in the environment because we've got this fluorescent marker in the mosquitoes, and it's a very powerful tool. It allows us to visualize the offspring from the crosses that we do, and it allows us to not only monitor but also detect the presence of that gene in the environment. So we have these powerful tools that allow us to monitor not only where it goes, but how long it stays there and whether it spreads.
Okay.
That was my question. The question asked, was it an independent study?
Oh, right, sorry, my apologies. We worked with the Mosquito Research and Control Unit, and it was a collaboration. So, but we did submit it to Nature Biotechnology for independent review by independent scientists.
Okay. Okay. May I ask a follow-up question if he has a minute? Can you address the egg bank issue? So once they emerge, once they hatch, they disappear. What about the eggs that are going to be sitting there and waiting in a container for the next rain a month or two later?
Yes, thank you. So one of the things that we didn't have time for is that Aedes aegypti eggs, they can survive in the environment for 3 to 6 months because they can actually sort of dry out. So there is a chance that some of those eggs could survive for longer, but we did the analysis for how long after the Cayman trial? Was it?
Cayman was about 9 months. So we continued monitoring using ovitraps. So one of the best methods for monitoring mosquitoes is you put out essentially a cup, and you might have seen some of those in your neighborhood. And the female mosquitoes lay eggs in those cups. Now, we can use those to monitor the general population of mosquito, but also we can recover those eggs and bring them back to the lab and hatch them out, and we can check for the presence of that gene, the fluorescence gene. And as Derek mentioned, that's one of the I think one of the great pieces of our technology that we've got. We can actually monitor how long they live for, how long they persist in the environment. So in terms of, I think the question was how long after we stopped releasing could we continue to detect? The adults disappeared within a couple of weeks because we also had adult traps. And the longest period after stopping release was 4 weeks in terms of ovitraps that we've detected. And that's not just the Cayman study, that's the other studies we've been doing in Brazil as well.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Andy.
And for our next question, we have Rudy Turnstone. Rudy, where you at? Raise your hand for me. There we go. Ruddy, I'm sorry.
First of all, it's on? Oh, I can't hear myself. Okay. First of all, I want to say that I think the format of this meeting is inappropriate in the sense that there wasn't an actual presentation more than 8 minutes about releasing genetically engineered mosquitoes, and I think the public deserves a longer presentation. I also want to say that the format of 4 minutes is dodging a lot of questions. And so I see that we have time later, but I hope that those questions are still answered later. I don't understand what exactly is native about a genetically engineered mosquito in terms of just like restoring native habitat. And also, please answer for me, it sounds like the studies have only been 9 months maximum. What are the long-term studies for genetically engineered mosquitoes impacts, and also the impact on species? Because birds and lots of other animals actually feed on them. What are the impacts to those species in regards to genetically engineered mosquitoes?
Actually, hold on.
Okay.
I do just want to, I'm not going to answer the study question that's there, but I will address the questions. We are limiting it 4 minutes so that we can get as many questions in as possible. I will take all these questions that are written down and I will answer them on our frequently asked questions site. I also answer every question that comes in to question@keysmosquitoes.org, and also floridatrial@oxitec.com. But if anyone has sent me a question via email, they know that I answer it, and I answer it as thoroughly as possible. So.
Thank you.
Okay. I hope I can get all your questions. So in terms of the other species, let me give you a quick rundown on Aedes aegypti. It's a species. Where did it come from? Why is it not native? Why is it native, et cetera? Okay, can you please repeat just to make sure that I get the question you want?
What is native about a genetically engineered mosquito? And please answer the impact, has there been a study of the impact to the species that eat mosquitoes?
Okay. Excellent. Okay, so the answer, there are studies about the effects on other species that eat, the ones that do it. Is it toxic to other insects to eat these mosquitoes? If there's some, there was a concern if other insects eat, and this is not part of your question, but let me answer it, and I'll get to that. What is that if a mosquito, other insects eat these genetically modified mosquitoes, will it harm them? There have been studies on that. Derek can explain more about that. But the other question you have is, if say we eradicated all the Aedes aegypti from Key West or in Key Haven, so all Monroe County, for example, this one species, the species that we're looking at is less than 1% of the total number of species in the county. There's about 45 species. This one is one, but it's really the only one that carries disease. It's the only dangerous one. The other ones are immensely problematic and nuisances. And, yes?
About Aedes aegypti, I'm asking what is native about a genetically engineered mosquito with a rate of 3% that it's going to survive in some way or another?
Okay, well, if the project works as proposed, there will be very few mosquitoes of Aedes aegypti of any kind, either the introduced GM mosquitoes or native mosquitoes. So the total number of these non-native species, and the GM one is not native, obviously, any more than the ones that are here now, but the total number will be lower. So you'll have fewer non-native insects in the Keys. Number one. Now, why is that important to the rest of the environment? And it is important about this mosquito because it is essentially it's like the cockroach of the mosquito world. Its role is not a natural food source.
You're actually taking up to 4 minutes. Can you answer the top thing about species impacts?
Okay, certainly. There will be negligible species impact. And the reason is because, how do we know? Because this species lives in houses. Its role in the environment is to escape predation. So it lives in houses, following people and in people's yards. Yes, I'm sure some geckos and other have as general as predators, but the total biomass of this species is tiny compared to salt marsh mosquitoes, which is out there by the hundreds of pounds. This particular species is it lives in houses like I mentioned, to avoid predators. So its role in the food chain is absolutely minimal, absolutely minimal.
And
Where's the study?
we had the same concerns.
Oh, there's many studies. I mean, okay. Well,
yeah. So,
hold on.
Sorry, there's lots of questions coming.
Can't answer all the questions at one time.
Okay. Is anyone else?
The gist of your question, let them answer.
The gist of the question is, will there be a negative environmental impact if you would remove all of these mosquitoes? Is that correct?
Effect on the predators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
will consumption? Yes. Yeah. No. Apologies. We have done feeding studies with this mosquito. We had the same concerns about effects on predators, because we know even though it might be a small chance that a predator might eat this, it's still possible. So we did feeding studies with other insects. We used a species called Toxobronchites, which is a predatory insect, and we fed it 100% of our mosquitoes, and we had a control group with feeding just normal wild-type mosquitoes. And this was a study done in Malaysia, and we showed that there was absolutely no effect of feeding 100% on these mosquitoes to that predatory mosquito. Now, we know in the wild they're not going to feed. Fish, we are doing a fish study, and we are doing a bird study. No, I believe we've almost finished those. Aedes aegypti lives in small pools of water. It breeds in and around your house. It does not live where fish are. Okay, so it does not. So there is very little risk. There's very little risk to fish, and other mammals might be able to feed on it. But we have done studies to show that this organism is non-toxic, basically, to other organisms.
And just to say, guys, so you're interested in studies, which I think is great, because you want to be able to look at the data yourselves, right? Yes. And make up your own minds, which is really important. So, right. So I'm trying to be helpful here. So what I would suggest is check out www.oxitec.com/publications, and you can see all the academic peer-reviewed publications which have been through.
All right.
Guys.
Okay.
Trying to be helpful here, guys. So, and also, if you email me, I can also send you the scientific studies, okay? So email floridatrial@oxitec.com.
George Linder. Yes, sir. Right up here, Chris.
We live in the Florida Keys, and it's a very fragile environment. And I think what we're most concerned, other than what it's going to do to humans, which is a big concern, what long-term studies? I mean, you mentioned Brazil, you mentioned some other areas, Cayman Islands. How long were those studies? 9 months? To us, that's not enough time. We need a longer time to find out what the long-term effect of your product will have on people and the environment. And we're concerned, too, that, you know what, Oxitec, I think you're trying to be as fair as you can, but you look at it one way and we look at it a different way, and you get the same data and different results. Did I make my question clear?
I think that's a really good point. So you're talking about the importance of having independent assessment.
Long-term independent assessment of the product, because I can look at the data differently than you and come up with different results.
And that's
who else has studied your product?
Yes, so in Brazil, we are working, Mosquito Board in Brazil, which is a company in Brazil, have independently assessed our product.
How long?
They have been using it for, Andy, how long?
It's about 6 years now, collaboration. It's Mosquito Board and also University of Sao Paulo, which is the leading university in Brazil.
And what did they study?
Starting off from laboratory studies, so about 2 years worth of evaluating in laboratory, checking that the mosquito, Oxitec mosquito, will breed and have the effect that we claim it has.
You know, a laboratory is a lot different than the environment.
Sure. So that's what I'm saying. We've been working for about 5 years. So the initial 2 years we're doing those types of studies, and that was followed by a sequence of field evaluations of increasing scale.
How long were the field evaluations?
The beginning of the field evaluations was the beginning of 2011.
So
and that's an increasing scale. So the first studies were in a city, to give a scale, similar sort of size area, about 10 hectares, and then that's sort of been repeated in different villages, and now they're currently working on a city of 50,000 people.
We're concerned that genetics in the environment has a long-term effect, and you're not assuring us of that.
Well, if I can address that one question, you know, when I joined the company, I had exactly the same concerns, mainly about agriculture, and the fact that the genetics in agricultural crops are designed to replicate an environment. You know, they're a positive trait, and one of the unique sort of attributes of this technology is the genetic modification is a trait which means it can't survive in the environment. That is the mechanism, essentially, by which we control the wild population, because we introduce males which contain this gene, they mate with the females, and then they inherit that change in the genetics so that the offspring don't develop. And when we say it's self-limiting, that's what we mean. So it's a genetic technology which is released into the environment to have the job to control a dangerous pest. But the actual genetics itself is designed in the way that it disappears from the environment. So if at any stage anything happens and there's any adverse effects, we can stop releasing, and it disappears within the life cycle of that mosquito. Generally, the males we release live 4 to 5 days. Now, there was a point earlier that there's a very small fraction that sort of lay eggs, and some of the eggs will last for a longer period. But when those eggs hatch and emerge, they won't develop. So I think that, yeah, the self-limiting aspect of the technology is personally, for me, a hugely important part of the technology, and why I believed it was a very safe technology. And part of the reason I joined the company, actually.
Beth, you have a question from one of our viewers?
Yes, Emily Sorkin wants to know, what role does tetracycline play in GM mosquitoes?
Yes, thank you. I'll take this one. So our mosquitoes, to be able to rear them in the laboratory, we have to switch off the gene that we're expressing. And we use tetracycline, an antibiotic, to do that. We add it to the larval diet. It switches off the gene. We can rear them to adults. We can sort the males, release the males. They mate with the wild-type females, and then the offspring die. So it's very simply a switch to switch off the gene.
And it's only used in the lab?
Yes, only used in the lab.
Okay,
yes.
and if based on former questions, one was, what happens if there's tetracycline in the water, out in a dog bowl, or in a sewer or septic or something like that? What effect will that have on the mosquitoes themselves, and then on the whole program? Would it make the program fail?
Yes. So if there's tetracycline in the environment, it can switch off the gene, and we've looked into that. And where mosquitoes breed, or Aedes aegypti breed, there is definitely no tetracycline. It's in small pools of rainwater, in your guttering and around your bins. In sewage water, where there can be tetracycline, mosquitoes don't tend to breed, or Aedes aegypti doesn't tend to breed.
This species, not all.
Sorry,
There
this
are definitely
species,
that
Aedes aegypti, doesn't tend to breed. Now, even if it did breed in those sewage tanks and survived to adults, if it mated and passed on the gene, and then the offspring were laid in non-tet water, they would die as well. So, in effect, yes, there could be a tetracycline in the environment, but we've also looked at studies that have been done to say, well, how much tetracycline is there in the environment? You need a certain amount of it to rescue our mosquito, to allow it to survive. And when we've looked at those studies in sewage water and in very contaminated sites, the amount of tetracycline doesn't seem to be enough to be able to rescue the mosquito, allow it to survive. So if you put all that evidence together, it is very unlikely that tetracycline in the environment, wherever it is going to have an effect on the control program.
Has it been a problem anywhere else? Because some of these places in Brazil, they have poor sewage systems, et cetera.
Yes.
That's the real issue. I mean, here, yeah, it may be here because we've got a great sewage.
Yeah.
But what about in those places, or in dairy farms and places like that?
That's a good question. We haven't seen it anywhere, and we can look for it. So we know our males that we release have a gene within them, and we release some females within that release, but we trap adults and we look for larvae, and we can analyze those for the gene, and you can actually see whether a lot of females are coming through with the gene in them, and that would suggest that there's something in the environment like tetracycline allowing them to survive. And then we can look into that, and we can go and say, well, okay, we found these in these traps over here in this region. Okay, is there a septic tank nearby? You can go and have a look at that, and if it is, okay, fine, well, then we know we can, there's a couple of things we can do. You can then go treat with conventional insecticides, because you know where it is, and you can treat it with conventional insecticides and kill off the mosquitoes. If you know where they are, it's easy to kill them. So that's what we do if we found that, and we can find that with our monitoring methods. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Beth, you have a question from
a question from the floor. Does anyone from Oxitec live in the areas where GMO mosquitoes have been released?
If I can take that question, I can understand. Sorry. Yeah, if I take the question, I certainly don't live in this area, but I guess the issue is, you know, are we being exposed to the mosquitoes, or that's my understanding of the sentiment behind the question.
No, have you lived yourself or anyone?
No, yeah, well, okay, that's what I'm coming to. So,
I guess the question is, will you live in an area where you're going to release these?
Or have you lived in an area?
Okay, yes, if I could answer the question, yes. So the first trial we did was in the Cayman Islands. If I could just finish. And it's a big study for me, and I moved there with my family, with my children. My son Matthew was 4 at the time, and my daughter Grace was 6. So they came to the area with me, and they were exposed to mosquitoes. And there's no way I'd have done that if I felt in the slightest way I was endangering them by doing that. So I don't live in Key Haven, but I certainly am willing to put myself, and I do that wherever I go in all the studies. I'm in the area and I'm doing the releases, and I wear, T-shirt, shorts, so I'm being exposed to the mosquitoes. But also I'm willing to bring my family to those areas. So I hope that sort of explains. I don't live here, no. Sure.
Oh, I should. Right. Right.
Okay.
No, but perhaps maybe I'm here, yeah.
We had the question. Angela Courtner has the next question. Angela?
I didn't write mine down because a lot of them have been answered. So I guess I'm left with, what's the baseline if you did this? How many AE mosquitoes do we have here in the Keys?
Yes.
Because if you say 99%, is it, there were 100 and there's one left? Or
okay, if you can get to my slides, gentlemen. Let's see if I can. If you can go to slide 52, it should be a line graph showing house infestations. Okay, I'm actually going to give this to Catherine Brzezinski because she is our works with our surveillance, and specifically, she's pretty much in charge of all the surveillance around Key West. So she can explain this particular house index and how many mosquitoes we have, and that type of thing. So I'll follow up if you need me, Catherine, but I'm sure you can handle this better than I.
Sure. So I am responsible for the surveillance that we do for Aedes aegypti throughout the Lower Keys. And in this particular instance, we've been monitoring the wild population of Aedes aegypti on Key Haven for the last year and a half. So we have pretty good baseline data for a longitudinal study. As for what our metric would be, we would be using ovicups, and we would be using adult traps to collect and discern whether or not there is a change in the population in the treatment versus the control area. So it would be relative to the treatment and control sites, but it would be a greater difference. We would determine success as a greater difference than 50% reduction in a treatment site versus the control site. So,
Okay, so if you can, the red line I put in is the general average, because I was assuming someone would ask this question about how many houses have mosquito infestation and how many mosquitoes are there per house. There's many ways to look at it, and Catherine, and this particular one was essentially the percentage of houses in Key West that are infested with Aedes aegypti, and you can. In the Key Haven slide, there's 3 traps, and I didn't have that. We have the data, but I didn't have it at my desk when I made these slides. So, Catherine, if you could talk about it, you collect those traps every day.
I don't have the data on me right now. So
I think they're just looking for rough numbers. Is there 10 mosquitoes, or are there 1 million mosquitoes?
If the concern is why are we concerned about it? There's enough mosquitoes to support transmission of dengue by anyone's measure. We have a lot of these mosquitoes here. It's an ideal location for them. You don't find, like as I mentioned, an Ocean Reef. It's too rural. It's too rural and too much space between houses. It's a very good place to have them. So the total number, if you look at number of mosquitoes per trap, I mean, can you do a comparison here to other places? Anyone from Oxitec compared to other places? Is that your question? I want to make sure I give you a number that won't help. Yes. Oh, excellent. Right, and yeah, this is exactly the same thing. So each line up and down is one of those weeks that made that graph. So this is the percent of houses infested. That's total for Key West. And this is by inspectors. We have eight inspectors who go door to door, and if they find mosquitoes at the house, it's a positive house. We've also done one to the number of something called a container index, but part of this is to show you that the population changes throughout the year. The black line is the average over 3 years, and the red line was this year. The point of that slide is the numbers go up and down each week, and so you can only compare. I'll just give you an example. Say there were 100 mosquitoes in a Key Haven house one week that was in the treated area, and there were 200 in the untreated area. And then the following week, it doubled at the house and doubled at the untreated area, and then dropped by a half, and then dropped by a half. That would show that there's no impact by doing the treatment. So there's different baselines. The untreated area has a baseline, and the treated area has a baseline, and you are comparing the two baselines. So are the mosquitoes dropping more in the treated area or in the control area? That's the only way to do a field study, unfortunately. It's not like a lab study where you can control the numbers in the species. In the cups we're finding, do we find anything else but Egypti?
No.
Okay, they're that specific. I mean, mosquitoes are amazing that you can put two different containers out and you get one species in one and one species in another. They're very finicky. They like particular types of water, even colors. Some species will go to some colors, some will go to light and others won't. That's why you can't just say if we do the treatment and there's fewer, and there's half the number of mosquitoes, well, the control area could have dropped by half too, because it got cold that week or something. So you have to compare the control to the treated area. And the statisticians have a real devil of a time with this. But like at CDC I worked at, there's ways to account for the ups and downs when you do those comparisons.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if it's eggs, then of course it's they're all females laying those eggs, and then in the adult traps,
50-50.
Generally 50-50 males and females in the traps.
Right.
And but you ID to male or female, and then record those separately.
Correct.
Okay, so we could give you information on males or females.
Okay, Beth, you have a question from the internet?
We had a question from a viewer. I just wanted to acknowledge it, David Greenberg, but he asked about tetracycline in the environment, so we've already addressed that question.
I think so.
I just wanted to...
Okay, and then Chris O'Brien from Key West, you had a question? Chris, are you here? There she is.
Thank you. Do I have this? Okay, I don't know where to start, but let me tell you that one of the things that I find about this whole process, which is very similar to the one we did 2 years or so ago, right, is how paternalistic it is. I mean, this is not really a discussion in any sense. This is all y'all sitting up there and kind of condescendingly offering us imprecise, number one, information. I don't know how many fudge words I've heard. If, well, we expect, seem, it should be. Maybe. I mean, maybe you are used to dealing with people in, I don't know, a jungle in Brazil. We're a tiny town, but we're pretty smart. I mean, you know, we know when to come out of the sun.
Right.
Yes, please.
Yep. And it's downright disrespectful and offensive.
So,
now, my question, one of them.
Chris,
Yes.
Chris,
One
hold
of
on the
my
mic, Chris.
questions is this. Since we had the, oh, be afraid, 93 cases of dengue here. Epidemic. Wow. How many have we had since then?
Okay, thank you.
Should we bring up the serology? No, it's, let me, Bill Irwin has a comment
Yeah,
on
I
that?
just want to respond on the,
response?
so they did park me next to Derek, but I'm not, this is not a team. I'm actually independent on this. I have not come down in favor or against this because I am looking at this as a scientist, looking at the evidence, tracking down all of the basis for all of the things that I see on Facebook and social media and articles.
But how many?
But I want thousands. I mean, I've read
here in
thousands of papers. No, I'm talking about of all of the studies and all the stuff.
Very credible scientists. I don't care how many studies on what you did. My question was, how many cases have dengue
No, you're right. No, but I was answering
dengue in the Keys?
I'll let them out. But I was answering your first question about being told the information. I just wanted to share this one thing because it makes it personal for me and why I'm doing this, why I care enough to do this, why I've spent all the time that I do looking at this issue rather than just putting up my hands and say, well, it's a GM, we don't want it anyway. And why I hope my wife and I are on our way to Thailand to work at an elephant sanctuary soon. And so we had to go get our slew of vaccinations for Japanese encephalitis and all kinds of things that aren't here. So we had to go to Miami to visit a specialist for this. And she said to us the one thing she is most concerned that she cannot vaccinate us for is dengue fever. And she spoke specifically about Aedes aegypti and its behaviors and what we have to be careful of and so on. So that really brought home to me that this is an issue for us here. Whether or not it is currently in Key West, it is knocking on our doors. And she, as an expert in this in South Florida, is very, very concerned about it and knows that we need to do something. And we had a conversation about this.
Well, then maybe she would like to volunteer her community for it. The point isn't about whether you're nice people. It's not about that at all. It's about getting some answers. Do you understand? Now, if you although your statistics, quote unquote, up there, 96, 88, that, they're not conclusive in terms of doing a scientific study. Yes. They're not in any way. You said your sample size was too small. It was insignificant in that sense.
Only for dengue, sorry, just to clarify, only for dengue transmission. For control of the mosquito, it's been verified. Well, it's independently verified by other scientists, so it's fact.
Okay, so how many cases have we had? No. Everybody up there has taken up the time of other people asking questions.
I'm going to have him answer your question. You asked how many, and Larry answered that earlier. Larry, would you comment on that, please?
As I said before, in 2009 there were 27 people infected, and in 2010 there were 65. None, thankfully.
Yes.
Do you want people to die? I don't. No. Okay, all right, now.
Okay, we've asked the question. Let him answer, please.
Are we past the timed period? Are we in the comment period now?
No.
I guess not.
Go ahead and answer the question.
What I was going to say earlier when you asked the earlier question, when I talked about we had dengue serotype 1, the problem is we have 4 different serotypes of dengue circulating in the Caribbean.
Everybody got that, right?
Yes.
Okay, we got it.
Ma'am, I'm just trying to explain myself. I'm not trying to talk down to you. An infection with another serotype of dengue can produce a very serious reaction where you can, I'm sorry, but you can have, not guaranteed you, but you can have a lot of people ending up getting very sick going to the hospital. It's incumbent upon us to investigate ways to control the mosquito because we cannot control the virus. We have no way of controlling if an infected individual comes in and serves as patient 0 for another outbreak.
Where does that rate between like ISIS and Ebola on the fear scale? I mean, I'm sick of this. We just want answers, not kind of suppose maybe stuff. We want answers. And if it takes time, you still haven't told me why you didn't stay back there in South America, expand your study. Why are you bringing it here? I don't think the people wanted you there. I know in the Caymans, they say you didn't even let the people know you were doing that on their island.
Well, just to answer, we did let them know. It was in the national newspaper before we went ahead with the releases. So we did let them know, and we did community engagement all throughout the trial. And we did a video that you can see on the MRCU website explaining about the releases and what was done. So we did inform the residents in Cayman of what was going on, and we're continuing to go on in Brazil, and we're continuing to continue in Cayman.
If in Cayman, is there's thoughts of doing more of it, and what are the public
Yes.
now?
So the Cayman government has, the MRCU has budgeted in their budget to do a programmatic use of our insect in the next year. We're just working on that with the Cayman MRCU, Mosquito Research and Control Unit.
Okay, Doc, thank you very much. Ma'am. Okay, ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we got to cut you off. Patty Crimmins. Ma'am. Thank you, Chris. And this is just, we're going into the comment section. We're going into the comment section. Go ahead.
Okay. This is the deal.
You're coming. What's your name?
We don't want genetic. I don't know. Is anybody having a problem hearing me?
To be on tape.
It's being recorded. Okay.
Go ahead.
So this is the deal. I could only speak for myself, but I would have to think that a lot of the people in this room would agree with me. We're not particularly thrilled with genetically modified anything. It's already in our food. And everything that I've read from the last Dog and Pony Show since really doesn't float my boat. I read stuff every so often because I read a lot of stuff. And I'm really terrible with statistical matters. But even when you're doing your testing, females do get in there. So it's not 100% male. And no matter what your numbers are, when you, over time and over releases or whatever, you're still going to have that percentage. That percentage ends up either on the ground or whatever, and then it starts getting up the food chain. That's what we don't like. And because we are a small area, in a minimally populated area, and Key Haven suits you perfectly, we object to that. We really do. Because we are humans and we don't like being treated like guinea pigs. And as far as your impact assessments, what I would suggest for the next Dog and Pony Show is you actually get, what would you say, peer review, people from like maybe Flopberg or some universities or Earth Justice, Food and Water Watch. Get some people that critique you, that look at you and say, we're not too thrilled about this either, and we've got really good scientists too. So then the next time you have one of these things, you're looking at us, we don't really understand it all. We're not scientists, but the scientists that are actually in our favor will be able to make us understand things a little bit better, because it is condescending in its nature just by what you're doing. Oh, well, we have studies, and we did this, and we did that. So what? We need somebody representing our side, not just your side. So, would you please have another one of these things, and let us have some people that don't necessarily agree with you, so we have somebody backing us up.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Okay, so is the question,
we have one more question. John Martini.
That was a comment.
Pat, that was a comment.
Okay.
I can answer the comment.
I think
I think we have answered
No.
most of those.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, John.
I think part of the sensitivity here is that.
I don't think his mic is on there, Chris.
It's on. Hello?
There you go.
I think part of the sensitivity is that we have a long history here of government germ warfare testing. In the 50s, there was many experiments in Key West on germ warfare. In the 60s, there was an inexplicable and rare cluster of MS in the Keys. After 9/11, we had aerosol germ warfare testing. I think that that's part of the history here. It's because we're an isolated community. People take advantage of that. We're controllable. My question is this a done deal?
It's not a done deal. It's been evaluated by the FDA. That's partly why they're here, to listen to your comments. It's been evaluated by other agencies. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Michael, sorry.
So evaluate it, but they could say no.
Yeah.
If what they find isn't up to the standards, we could say no.
Yes.
If the trial is done and it's not effective, you stop it there. No, the trial is not a done deal.
You just said it was.
It is not a done deal. No.
No.
No. No. FDA could say no. We're months away from any possible release. A done deal. Okay. Many questions here. The question was, what was the original question? I'm getting several. That wasn't your question. This is the gentleman with the question, sir.
The question is, are these mosquitoes going to be released soon or at all? Is that done? And then are we going to study that after the fact? In other words,
The answer is
is there any way for citizens to stop those mosquitoes?
The answer is no. That it is not a done. It's not a done deal, or that it's for sure they're going to be released because there hasn't been the evaluations completed yet. If something comes up in the evaluation that gives anyone of significant or valid concern about health, anything with that, if, for example, if there was an allergen that this mosquito, which it doesn't now, when you get a bump from this mosquito, it gets the same kind of bump you get from any Aedes aegypti. If something else comes up, that there's a health hazard or environmental hazard or anything else in this, then we would stop it immediately. I mean, so your question is who would stop it? There's any of the control methods that are done are value, and this is the EPA decides if the amount of chemical that we sprayed last week on the streets of Key Haven or 2 weeks ago, whenever that's done, is evaluated by a federal agency to say how much of this chemical is safe for people, and that's being done all the time, and every 5 years they're reevaluated. In this particular situation, and in this situation. That has to be done also. It's the same, very similar process is with any other type of control measure.
But is that dependent upon the mosquito being released and then studied?
Well, the only way to find out if it works is to see if it works. Because you can only, as many people pointed out, the only way excuse me, sir. So your question.
My question is, essentially, there is no way to stop this without starting it.
No, that's not how the process works.
Okay, so there's a way to stop it.
Andrew can just give his question
I think only if there's a valid argument to stop it. I think that's why we're here. Yes, to discuss.
Yeah, it was my predecessor in 2009 invited Oxitec to talk more about that to see if it was possible because during that time, just as now, there's no as hard as our staff works and they do an excellent job, better than anybody, it's still too many mosquitoes. And so the former director said, is there any other way? They looked at Wolbachia, at biological controls, at these containers that have an insecticide where they lay eggs and it kills the eggs. Trust me, we look at many of them, and we'd be happy to explain all these different techniques that have been attempted. So they were invited to say, what can you, Oxitec, do something better than what's being done now? And that was 5 years, and it's been a very slow process.
Okay.
Nothing's being done quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Dora. We started a little bit late, so we're going to do a 10-minute warning here. Peter Cohn, you had a comment? Yes. Sir? Right here.
What we have here is a failure to communicate. You've got scientists talking to people that don't have scientific understanding. When you have people that don't have an understanding or knowledge of a subject, you're often going to have fear. And that's what we're experiencing here right now today. When you had the sterile, irradiated technique for screwworm flies, we eliminated a problem that was wiping out the cattle industry from Southern California to Southern Florida. And people were terrified of the idea of releasing irradiated flies because people didn't have an understanding of the difference between irradiation and radioactive. They thought it was a communist conspiracy. And so it was basically because people did not understand it. So I would say there's been a failure of a scientist to communicate really what this is all about, and a failure of the public to have an understanding of the genetics involved. And the fear is all based on this. And so that's what I believe is the problem here. Because I really cannot, as a biologist and someone with a scientific background, see a danger in releasing something that's going to be destroyed by its own genetics and eliminated by its own genetics. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
We have another comment from Keith Nix.
I went to the last meeting and I didn't ask a question. I just sat and listened. And I watched your slides and I saw the statistics and I kind of disagreed with them. That's why I went door to door. So my statistics were way different than yours. I don't want to argue that. But I didn't find one single person that agreed. But my question, and I hope it doesn't cause a lot of debate, but it's kind of like loopholes in the government and how GMO mosquitoes are being fit under new cosmetic drugs in the permit applied in the FDA. So can you answer that question? How are they being fit as a cosmetic drug?
Okay, best for FDA because it's their definition.
The permit applied in the FDA. So how are the mosquitoes being put under a new cosmetic drug in the permit applied in the FDA?
Okay, just to correct, it's not a cosmetic drug. It's called the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, so that may be part of the confusion. But it is under the new animal drug provisions. Oh, that's good. Thank you. That's better. So it's the new animal drug provisions. It's because there's a longer definition of what a drug is under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, but part of it is that it's an article that affects the structure or function of an animal. So in a genetically engineered animal, there's an rDNA construct that's intended to affect the structure of the animal, and that's the case here. So that's why it meets the legal definition. And you know, there have been some cases where another agency, USDA in the case of the pink bollworm, has regulated a GE animal. In those cases where another agency is already adequately regulating the insect, FDA has exercised enforcement discretion and they've gone ahead and regulated it, but here they weren't going to do that. So that's why FDA is exercising its authority so that someone is regulating that. And we are, as we said, enlisting the support of the relevant experts from other agencies.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie Vestal. Hi, Stephanie.
This is just a comment about the GMOs. It's basically genetically modified organisms. We've already found out that it doesn't work with wheat. Like, people have more wheat allergies than they ever did before. Wheat was the staff of life. So when you're thinking GMO, why do we need something else that's GMO'd? Mosquitoes are a living thing, and the GMO, it's generically modified. It's made in a a laboratory. It's not a natural thing. So I think that we really have to look at where we're going with chemicals and all this stuff that's involved in creating these mosquitoes, and how many more chemicals do we want to use in our food chain and just in life. I mean, we're being thrown chemicals all the time, and we don't need them. And we are grassroots people, and we need to have a say in what's going on, and I think that's really important. That's it. That's my comment.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next comment would be from Linda Williams. Linda?
I hope I can express this in words, because what I see happening is that there are a lot of people here who know a lot, have studied a lot, and speak from their head and science. And then the rest of us seem to have this gut feeling that can't be put into science about who we are and our connection with the whole. So when you separate yourself as a scientist and look at things, it's different than when you're connected with the whole. And by the whole, I mean the whole of nature, the whole of life, future generations. We're taking things into consideration that you probably won't be able to prove or disprove. And also, I think most people here are not concerned about the effectiveness. I think we're concerned about, can anybody help me, being unintended consequences by disconnecting ourselves from life itself and how it works. And I know we're all afraid of death and what we might die from, but I think we should be more afraid of what we're turning our Earth, our planet, our solar system into. So I think that these people are emotionally connected, whereas you all are more mentally connected. And without both sides, and I know this is funny to the scientists, without both sides, our planet is not going to be the same. That's.
Thank you. And I apologize, we missed Randall Roberts. You had a question? Randall, are you still here? I apologize, we missed him. A comment from, and a question from Andrew Horowitz.
Just one.
Okay. And he's up next anyway, I believe, isn't it? Is it Joe's?
Hi, my name is Jack Newman, and I'm an environmentalist, and I used to live in Key West, where my family made their living fishing for stone crab and welding bronze jewelry. It's great to be back, but I'm afraid you're not going to like what I have to say. I came down here with Andrew because we're both geneticists, and we've been following this technology for a long time. I'm a PhD scientist now. I live in Berkeley, California, and I went into science, and I'm so thankful for the last person's comment, because I want to echo that. I went into science because I believe people do best for themselves and the earth when they use both their heads and their hearts. I've spent the last 10 years working on an affordable cure for malaria, a disease exclusively transmitted by mosquitoes, and that's how I came across the Oxitec technology. I don't work there. I came here for two reasons tonight. The first, to express my admiration and confidence in the Director for Mosquito Control, Dr. Michael Doyle. Dr. Doyle has done an amazing job not only in mosquito suppression, but for the Florida Keys, but also in finding and implementing the most environmentally benign solutions for mosquito control, reducing the need for synthetic pesticides in favor of other organic options. And we are very lucky to have Michael Doyle looking after mosquito control in the Keys. The second reason I'm here is to, quite frankly, express my support as an environmentalist and a scientist for this mosquito technology under review. It is my scientific opinion that this technology is 10 times more effective than traditional synthetic pesticides at half the cost, with no damage to people or the environment. This has been proven to my satisfaction in published research by many labs, many of them completely unrelated to Oxitec, many critical of Oxitec. And it's also been proven in real-wide implementation in Malaysia, in the Cayman Islands, and in Brazil. Mosquitoes last for 10 weeks in the environment, 2 weeks in the environment, and then they're gone. In all cases, the technology is performed as advertised, more effective than chemicals, less cost to the taxpayer, no damage to people or the environment. The implications for the Florida Keys is impressive on cost savings alone, but the implications for public health is even more impressive. This technology can prevent future outbreaks of dengue fever, which actually claimed 1,000 victims, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that afterwards, a few years ago in Florida. And this technology could also be a solution for all vector-borne diseases like malaria, which claims the lives of over 600,000 children every year. 20 died since I sat here. Now we have an opportunity to do well by doing good, to think with our heads and our hearts. Key Haven can reduce the cost of their mosquito control program, reduce the risk of future dengue fever outbreaks, and take a leadership role in global health. It is truly an opportunity to think globally and act locally. To steward this program, we have a dedicated professional with the interest of the people at heart in Michael Doyle. And as a scientist, I endorse the technology under review, but perhaps more importantly, I have faith in this professional because he spent his life trying to do the right thing. So, Dr. Doyle is here tonight to take thoughtful questions and comments so that he can implement the best program to keep us all safe. And I just ask that we give him thoughtful comment and then let Dr. Doyle the chance to do his job as best he sees fit. Thank you.
Thank you. And a comment from, is it Joseph Palmer? That was a comment. He was signed up under comments. Yep.
I can talk to you.
Joseph Palmer?
I'd be happy to talk to you about it afterwards. I'm sorry, Pat, but I can talk to you about the money thing for as long as you want afterwards. Be happy to.
Joseph Palmer not here. Thank you. Connie Tarpley. Hey, Connie.
Hi. I'm afraid that maybe my question has been touched on before, but I still needed to say it because I'm not a scientist. But I've seen enough failed science experiments in this country involving the environment to make me very wary of anything, especially something that people aren't able to give the facts on. And what I just, I don't want this to go to Brazil. I mean, somebody mentioned DDT earlier. I know that it's banned in this country, but we're still selling it in other countries, and they're using it to fight mosquitoes in places, and it's really hurting people. And so I don't want it to go to Brazil. I just don't understand why we have to put something into the environment because, as you pointed out clearly, we are being very effective in controlling the mosquitoes here with the non-invasive stuff. So why do we want to do this other stuff? I know in other countries it's much harder to do that than it is here, but I think that if we work, we can do it. And as far as the comment of having people here on staff and ready to go, I mean, we could put that into place somewhere else, but I don't necessarily even believe that it needs to be in place somewhere else. But my concern is too that these other failed experiments where we've put things, we've killed things in the environment and then we've tried to put them back in, and it just doesn't work. We're constantly trying to play God or something. I don't know exactly how to put it, but it has failed miserably many times, and I agree with John that really you've experimented on us enough. I really don't want it anymore, so thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. And a comment from Summer DeBastiani. I apologize if I didn't say that correctly. Chris? Pick up, Chris.
Everyone, thank you. This was kind of a question. Hi, guys. Well, this is exciting. I'm actually here from Miami. I'm sorry I came late. My partner lives in Key Haven, and we were thinking about buying in Key Haven, which now I'm not quite so sure if I'm going to do. I'm a professor of public health nursing at University of Miami. I'm a published researcher, I'm not a PhD. I attended the last mosquito meeting, and thank you, Michael and Derek and Bill. They've been in touch and have sent me some information. Other I'm still waiting on. Bill, the literature review, please. I did my own literature review, and I did find some studies. I would have liked to found studies from higher impact journals. I would have liked to have found studies from third-party studies, but I didn't really see that. I think my biggest concern, and there's a few questions I want to ask. I'm sorry, I know I'm talking slow, I'm nervous. I don't like crowds. So I did speak to an epidemiologist who worked in Brazil, and one of my questions for Oxitec is, have you been criticized before from other scientists for not using the most up-to-date sorting methods for differentiating between your males and females in the larvae? So could your 0.03% estimate of release be a gross underestimate of what is actually going to be released of the female biting mosquitoes into our population? That's one question. The other question is, and I haven't been able to find these, but have there been any studies on the health impact of the human population after you have done these releases? I mean, as a public health professional, that's my largest concern, is that, you know, we do have these laboratory studies, but we don't have population-based studies. And as the FDA, where's our FDA representative? I worked at CDC for 4 years, so I'm pretty familiar with how the government runs and all this stuff. You know, there are stages for trials, for drugs, for anything that includes a human population study, not just on the separate allergens that the mosquito has 2 different proteins in the saliva that is not found in the native species. And what they have done is they've studied these proteins in the lab and said they're not to be known allergens, so we don't think this is going to have an effect in the population. That's what's been done, and that's what's been published on from what I've read and what I've seen. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. But there hasn't. Yes?
I don't want you to run out of time. You had a question that you wanted the panel to answer for you?
I did. I asked one. And
okay. Sorting efficiency.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're cutting me off already after the speech.
I want to get your question in.
That's not patronistic at all. So what my question was, has there been, I guess my second question was the long-term impact studies on the population, of the health of a population, of the people. You know, my concern is the people. It seems like this is not, you know, that those studies aren't there, and it's a big release in a population where the science just isn't there. Those are my 2 questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Summer. I'll start with the sorting efficiency. So we have actually developed our own sorting efficiency method because there wasn't one available to sort male and female mosquitoes. So we developed our own, and this is the best in the world at the moment. For sorting efficiency. It's 99.97%, and that's been confirmed in several different trials around the world. So,
is it confirmed actively during a trial?
Yes.
Not 10 years ago?
No, confirmed actively during a trial, okay. Yes, that's right. And then for your second question, I'll be reasonably quick, but it's not found in the saliva. We've done studies, those 2 proteins. So it's not found in saliva, and yes, we have done the studies to show that it's non-toxic and non-allergenic.
But the long term, though, she was asking if there's any long-term studies. Is it on people, on a population of increased or decreased dengue, anything, or other diseases? Yeah,
so we are starting those. So in terms of dengue, as we said before, we haven't done a large enough study to be able to show anything with dengue. In terms of health of the population, removing dengue can really increase the health of a population, not decrease it. So I think...
how long would it take to get that data? How many people and how long? So do you know that? I mean, compared to what you've done now?
I'm sorry, Andy might be better at answering that question than me. He's looking into this.
Yeah, so I've been, talking to various epidemiologists from different universities, and I was recently talking with the WHO about this approach, and the consensus is somewhere in the region of 250,000 to 500,000 people in terms of a population size, which would allow you to demonstrate to a clinical standard in terms of statistics that you have a statistical control of dengue. And as you can imagine, that's a huge sort of scale of operation and study.
Chris, did you have a comment on that?
Oh, I guess I can jump in and just say I think the point is that you have to start small with trials and then you build your way up, and that's how the science works. So you start with a small trial, and then if everything goes well, regulators agree that you can continue, people are interested in continuing, then you can roll out bigger and bigger trials until you get the large enough sample size to test more and more questions. So in every country, Oxitec has to work with whoever the regulators are in that country. So the FDA is the leading agency for this investigation, and they're working in collaboration. Oh, FDA might answer this better.
I just realized I failed to mention before, in addition to all the other regulation we talked about, both USDA and CDC have a process for permitting to import the eggs, and they both do inspections of the facility, and that's completely separate from the FDA stuff that I was talking about before, and I had failed to mention that.
Thank you. Beth, you had some comments that were written that you would like to read? Or?
We have a lot of questions that still were not answered, and I know we're over time. I have a lot of email addresses on the sign-in sheets. I am going to respond to each of these questions and send them to all the email addresses that I have. If you did not give me your email address when you signed in, please come see me and give me your email address so that I can communicate effectively with all of you.
Beth, could you put together a FAQ with all of those questions and answers and supporting data
Yes.
or references for
Yes.
so that people could actually read the answers to the questions and where the answers came from?
I'll put the questions, the answer, all supporting data. I'll answer them as thoroughly as I can.
Sure.
I'm going to, if you submitted your email address, we'll also probably put them on the FAQ section on the Oxitec site. I'm assuming that they would go there, but I am planning on emailing the answers to all these questions we did not get to everyone that submitted their email address to me. I am making an email communication list. Anyone that provided their email address tonight, I will update them with every new step along the way. I will answer all the questions that we did not get to tonight. Yes. 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 I'm going to do both. Yep. Thank you. Give me 2 seconds and I'll count. Yep. No, there's probably about 20 or 30. Yeah. I was going to say if there was only 10 or 5, we would continue doing this, but with 20 or 30, yeah.
Good.
Sure. It's actually right up there. The bottom one is me, and the floridatrial@oxitec.com is Chris. But the questions at Keys Mosquito is Florida Keys Mosquito Control.
Mike, you want to answer that?
Okay.
Or you, Beth?
The presentation that was, it really, those are all backup slides in case somebody had a question. I put as many slides from previous presentations on there just to pull them up. That's on our website. It's under, if you go to the website, keysmosquito.org, and then you go to genetically modified mosquitoes, and it'll have all the surveys in full.
Thank you guys for coming. If you have any more questions that you'd like to talk to further about anyone on the panel, please stay and ask.
Yes. I get up right now, so. And I think it was in 2.